Welcome to Your Career Story podcast, a show that's designed for rockstar professionals looking for that extra booster shot of confidence in their careers. Whether you're trying to get clarity on a job transition, want some work-life balance inspiration, or need a strategy to snag that promotion or raise, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Jenna Viviano, ex-Wall Streeter turned startup junkie who now coaches hundreds of clients, empowering them to take back control of the job search and land their dream job. So sit back, grab a glass of wine, and prepare yourself for your weekly boost of career confidence. Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Your Career Story podcast. I'm here on season 2 where we're talking all things work-life balance. And I have my dear friend, Aaron Bailey, here today, who's going to be chatting with us a little bit about his sabbatical, more or less, that he took when he hiked the PCT. So, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Jenna. Thanks for having me.
So you and I were friends in New York City, and we kind of became friends like in a very roundabout way. Like we kind of fell into this friend group that there was like a group of us, and we were on this massive group text thread, and we became really good friends over this time period. And then you left us, and you hiked the PCT.
Kind of a random thing, I know, right?
Super random. And then you moved back to California. So tell us a little bit about, who you are now and what you do now.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I actually just changed jobs. So I was in kind of the SaaS, software as a service, ad tech world for about 4 or 5 years. And 5 weeks ago, took a new job with a VC accelerator in San Francisco called 500 Startups. And I run the network partnerships here. So any brands that want to connect with kind of the early stage founder community, I manage that kind of line of business for us.
So you recently went through a job change. I found that San Francisco is a very competitive marketplace. Would you say that's true? Just in general?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think it is. It depends on what you're looking for.
Sure.
Like everyone's looking for a good developer. If you're a good developer, you're going to get picked up real quick. If you're a good salesperson, even if you're a bad salesperson, I mean, there's so many account executive roles here, but yeah, I guess for the stuff that's worth it, it's competitive, but there's so many jobs out here. I think we have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country.
Yeah, I just find that when I'm coaching a lot of people from the San Francisco area, it's very, very competitive. And a lot of people are vying for similar type of roles that are the good roles, if you will. It's pretty competitive. So I was just curious what your thoughts were on there. So first of all, congratulations on your new job.
Thank you.
And so tell us a little bit about, when you think about your time back. So walk us through, what was your decision? What contributed to your decision to hike the PCT?
Yeah, I haven't thought about that in a long time. I mean, it's like now it seems like such an insignificant sort of decision, but then I guess like all decisions, right? Like, I mean, then it felt like the biggest thing in the world. Like, oh my gosh, am I ruining my life by doing this?
Yeah. Why does it feel small now? Why do you say that?
Well, I mean, you just look back and you're like, oh yeah, I did that. I'm really glad I did that. And I can't imagine my life any other way.
Yeah.
So it just feels like that was meant to be. But in it, you're like, holy cow, this is a huge transition. And am I kind of screwing myself over? I mean, I definitely went through those thoughts. But I think like the decision, there's a little background with the decision. When I started my career in ad tech, I remember my dad told me, no matter, what job you get, you need to be in that job, grind it out for 2 years and establish your career. Just to show other companies that you can be loyal and stick it through. So in my head, I was like, okay, I just need to stay here for 2 years, no matter what happens, which maybe isn't the healthiest thing in the world. But, and so I did that I had just barely hit, or I was coming up on 2 years, and my buddy Sterling from college.
You went to school at Westmont,
I went to
right?
Westmont, Westmont College down in Santa Barbara. He was quitting his job and was either going to move to New York with me or do the Pacific Crest Trail. Should we define the Pacific Crest Trail just for those who don't know?
Can we do that, please, for people who don't know? Yeah, let's do that. Because I honestly
had PCT. That's what.
The
everyone
PCT,
who listens to it should know. Yeah. So if you listen to, or if you ever saw Wild or read the book Wild, it's kind of the center of that book. It's what's called a through hike. Through hike is defined as any trail lasting over 400 miles. There's 3 main through hikes in the U.S. One's called the Pacific Crest Trail, goes from Mexico to Canada, and it's 2,600 miles long.
Which is what you did, right?
That's what I did. Yep. And then there's the middle. There's like one that goes up the gut of America called the Continental Divide Trail, and there's one on the East Coast called the Appalachian Trail, which I think is probably the one that people are most familiar with. But I did the Pacific Crest Trail, so yeah, I guess getting that out of the way.
Yeah, the PCT, Pacific Crest Trail.
Yeah. So back to the decision. My buddy blindsided me and said he was going to do the Pacific Crest Trail, and we're both found out about the PCT during college.
Okay.
And I mean, my friend group was like, when we graduate, we're all going to do the PCT kind of thing. And 1 year turned into 2 years, and it's just like we moved on, and we didn't think any of us were going to do it. But then Sterling was, going to take this leap of faith and go and do it. And I was like, well, I mean, he's probably one of the only guys on earth I'd want to do this with. And it's been 2 years, and I'm not that happy. So, and it wasn't necessarily the job as much as it just I just wasn't that happy with the person I was becoming in New York. I think I was kind of scared at the person I was becoming. And
what do you mean by that? Because I can relate to that feeling and we've kind of probably processed this in real life and back when we were in New York. But what do you mean by that?
Kind of core parts of who without this becoming like a therapy session.
Sure.
Core parts of who I was were kind of fundamentally changing. And I couldn't determine whether that was just growing up, whether that was, the job that I was in and the pressures and different responsibilities I had to take on, and kind of personas I had to take on to succeed at my job, whether that was influencing it, or whether it was just, the grind of New York grinding me into dust.
Which it does to many people, including myself for a time period.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And the thing is I just love New York, and I want to move back there. Like, it's addicting, but but New York was having an effect on me I don't know if this was right or wrong, but looking back, I don't think I've ever said this out loud. I think I chose to run away from that instead of face it. And maybe that was the good, best thing to do. I don't know. That's just what I chose to do.
So you chose to run. You're saying you chose to run away from New York by hiking the Pacific Crest Trail was part of it.
So one of the things I found out on trail was people are either running towards something or running away from something. So you'll get a whole gamut of people who are going through the gnarliest things. And then you'll also get these people who are not, and who are just out there purely for fun. I think there's this stigma that like, oh, you go on the trail and you find yourself. But
do you feel like you found yourself?
Hard to do that. No, well, I don't know. What does that even mean? I mean, it's just getting to know yourself. And I mean, the trail didn't do a whole lot of that. I learned a lot of other things on trail, but I didn't I didn't come off the trail being like, I am so solid in who I am. Like, I came off being like, oh, I have a lot more adventures I want to go on and learn even more about myself. But it's different for everybody. There's this saying on trail, hike your own hike. Don't feel the pressure to hike the trail for any reason or any way that anybody else is doing it. Like, just make it your own. And so you'll hear that a lot if you ever get on the PCT or the AT for that matter.
Yeah. So when you were going through this decision process in New York, Sterling was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. You're contemplating, I'm struggling with who I am in New York City right now. What else contributed to your decision? Was it like, is it now or never? Or what else were you thinking through when you were deciding, hey, I want to go and do this thing? What was the drop dead moment you're like, I'm doing it?
Yeah. That's a really good question.
It might have just evolved over time too. It might not have been a drop dead moment.
Yeah, I don't remember necessarily. Like, I don't make decisions like that. Typically, I make them very slowly. Yeah. And
yes, I do seem to remember that.
Yeah, and I really like the idea of like, this thing has a beginning and an end, and there's going to be a million obstacles in the way. Like, what a cool goal, like, okay. Sure. Is this something that I can do? Like, I haven't even spent like a week camping, like done a whole week of camping before. Can I, if I put my whole life into something, am I able to kind of accomplish that? And I think that was really appealing. And also let's just spend a bulk amount of time outside and see what it does to me. And it is the antithesis of New York, where it's like
100%.
It's overwhelmingly, like a massive stimulant all the time. Your dorm is loud, or not your dorm. It honestly felt like a dorm.
Yours was kind of like a dorm. Your apartment was definitely like a dorm.
It was the smallest thing, smaller than this conference room that I'm in right now. But that was an exciting thing to me. Just like, let's go the opposite extreme and see what happens to me, and test my limits, test my capacity, because it is a big part about rest in a weird way too, because a lot of it is boring.
Right.
You're hiking every day, but it's the first section of the PCT is 700 miles of desert.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember you guys going through that. It was fun, even just from a bystander's perspective, because we followed along with you, and we were very much I felt like we were a part of it with you, supporting you in that. And it was so interesting to watch you guys do that. And I specifically remember you were like, okay, we have to get through this desert time. We have to get through here.
It's the section that people quit the most in. And I think there's every excuse to, because it can be miserable. Yeah, it was a brutal experience, but it was also really beautiful at times. And I tried to take pictures at those times to be like, hey, it's not all bad. Yeah. But but it was definitely the hardest part of the PCT. And a lot of my friends who I'd made, in those first 40 days in the desert.
Yeah. Wow, that's a little biblical and prophetic. I know, right?
Yeah. I think it was actually 41, so I was off by one day.
Okay.
But it was a hardcore experience. It was good though. It like breaks your body in, it breaks your mind in. And then after that, you get what's called your hiker legs, and which essentially just feels like no pain. You can hike over any mountain, like hike 30, 40 miles and you're okay. Like, your body just becomes this caloric machine. So anyway. Yeah.
Well, so were you nervous when you were in New York? You've had this career, you were in it for 2 years, or approaching your 2-year mark rather. You were successful in what you were doing, and you kind of had a pathway forward. Were you nervous about taking time off work? Because I think a lot of people look at sabbaticals, and we can call this a sabbatical, we can call this an adventure, whatever you want to call it. You took time off from work, right? And I feel like a lot of people, especially early in careers, and quite frankly, any point in your career, I have this conversation with a lot of people, giving yourself the permission to take that rest and take that time away from a career that you've been building is a really hard thing to do. I'm facing that right now, where I want to take some time off, and I'm even struggling, and I'm my own boss. I control my career, and I'm still struggling with that idea. So was that something that you felt nervous about, taking that time off of work?
Yeah, I did a little, I think, but not as much. I had I had such little responsibility. Sure. And there was sales, again, feels like it's kind of just easy to jump into. And I was successful. And so I had the ability to quantify my success and just show like, hey, I took this from 0 to 100. I can do that for you too. So I don't think I was that nervous about it. What I was more nervous about was like, am I actually going to find something that I really want to do?
Right.
And is this like a launch pad for that? Because on trail, like all you're thinking about is finishing. But there's this lingering thing in the back of your head. Okay, after I finish, like, what the heck am I supposed to do next? Sure. And, am I going to find, like, is something just going to come to me? Or, am I going to have some awakening? I think I was waiting for that a little bit, but I was also like, I don't want to be thinking about that. I just want to be enjoying it out here and learning the lessons that nature has to teach. And, the people on trail that I met had to teach me, and my friendship with Sterling, what that had to teach me. And I learned so much.
It's a very active concentration on being present, but it's so hard to do that 100%. When you're thinking about, I just want to finish, which is in the future. Yeah. Did you discover something professionally when you were out there?
Well, there was definitely a couple moments professionally, I think. And
personally.
My level of confidence like skyrocketed during the PCT because it felt like such a big, like unfathomable thing to do. If you think about it, it's 100 marathons.
Oh my gosh.
And over like, hundreds of thousands of uphill or feet of uphill, right? And at the beginning, you can't really fathom the end. And at the end, you can't fathom the beginning. Like it's just such a long trail and such a daunting thing. And like halfway through, I remember thinking like, geez, I can't believe I've come this far. And I think I can just continue to do this. And if I do that, if I just continue to put one foot in front of the other and just learn all these lessons the hard way, whether that's, learning how to make a fire in the rain, or, whatever. Like there's all these just little things that come up that's like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then you figure it out and you survive and you move on. Like, I just felt like, man, I can do freaking anything. Dude.
Yeah.
Like if I just kind of do a sprint in learning about that particular thing.
Yeah.
So it was really
huge.
Encouraging.
That's really huge. Yeah. The confidence piece. Obviously that makes sense. And how did that translate to you even from, did you discover like, hey, I want to continue doing sales. I really enjoy this. Or did you discover, hey, I don't want to do this thing anymore? What do you feel like you mulled over? Because I know music was a huge part of your life too. And that was something you were thinking through. So how are those thoughts stirring? And did you come to any conclusion during it professionally about your professional life? And then I want to hear about personal too.
That's a good question. Did I come to anything professionally? I think it taught me also a lot about risk.
Interesting. Okay.
Because the PCT, not like the PCT to me, after I started it, I was so stoked to do it. Like I didn't really view it as much of a risk, but just the things that you do are risky, like, okay, I don't know, like without being too dramatic, like there was a couple times where we had to take some big risks that, whether or not they were life-threatening, they felt life-threatening.
Sure.
And, and high risk, high reward, and there is no really reward there other than looking back and being like, that was an amazing thing to do. Again, without going into details, but so I think it taught me a ton about overcoming fear and making risky moves, which I did a lot of in my career after the PCT. I should say I was much more comfortable taking risks, sometimes to my own demise, but, I don't know. I think I was very risk averse beforehand, and now I'm much less risk averse, which is, again, either for better or for worse, affected my career. And then what was your second question?
Personally, like what did you learn personally from that experience? I'm sure it's a ton. So the professional, it sounds like you discovered that you were a little bit more risky in what you decided to do because like, hey, I can do anything, and the confidence factor. So those two pieces is what I'm hearing from the professional standpoint. What about personally?
Yes. Personally, I would say it was just a 4.5 month long exercise in, overcoming any obstacle that comes in my way, the persistence. And I think I learned a lot relationally as well. It kind of cracked me open in a lot of ways. I don't know. I again, without going into too much detail or, turning this into a therapy session, it definitely opened me up, like emotionally. It put me in a place that, multiple times, an emotional place I've never been to before. Sure.
Well, it forces you into that because you're only alone with your thoughts.
Yeah. And that is a crazy thing, actually, to bring that up. Like it is like the silence is hardcore. There's not really any other place I can think of that you can be alone with your thoughts for so it's like
jail. Probably that's about it.
It's like I'm hiking with Sterling, right? But I'm only hiking with him maybe for the first 5 or 10 minutes of the day because you get into a rhythm and a pace, and you don't want to compromise that pace. Your breathing and your heartbeat and your the pace of your legs and the swing of your arms, and you don't want to compromise that. And we're going probably 0.33 miles per hour difference. But at the end of the day, that's like 2 miles or whatever, whether he's ahead of me or I'm ahead of him. And so you're alone the whole day. And you just maybe meet him up for lunch and maybe for dinner. And then you're sleeping at the same campsite. Yeah. So that's, 143 days of being alone, basically. Yeah. And your brain, I think, goes through these stages of just like, after New York, it's racing. Oh, this is so exciting. And then it gets really boring. And then it gets boring for like days on end. And then you get really comfortable with the silence. And then your mind just starts to, at least mine started to go to all these places that like old memories that I haven't thought of for like decades just started coming up, and I just started processing through all this really weird stuff, you know, that I had never really processed through. And that brought up a ton of weird emotion. But praying through that, I mean,
that's probably a huge portion
exercise.
Of it. When you're out there alone, and because my default is to be like, okay, I'm going to call it my friend.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not as possible for you. Like I don't know if I could do that personally. I admire you because I don't think that is in my skill set, to say the least.
You actually totally could. The thing is like after halfway through the PCT, okay, so I told you before, like I had that confidence boost. I was like, wow, I can do anything. Sure. My second thought was literally anybody can do anything. Like this, if I can do this, like really anybody can. I mean, there was an 8-year-old who did it that year. His trail name was Boone. His mom was doing it with him.
That's amazing.
And then there was like an 80-year-old that was doing it that year. And it's not like these people are like hyper fit. Like you get on trail to get fit. I didn't do any training for this. Like you just take it, a mile at a time. And no one's preparing for the mental agony or the physical agony and the kind of ecstasy also that you feel in both of those things. They just kind of come at you. So Jenna, I think you can do it. I'll do it with you.
I don't know if I want to do it. I think that's the other thing. I can think of other things that would stretch my my physical and my mental health, if you will. That's probably not my jam. Mm-hmm. But tell me, okay, so you hiked how many miles did you hike in total?
I think 2,650.
Okay, just to name a few. So what was that feeling like when you were done?
I was so stoked.
You're like, I am finished.
Also so sad. Well, you reach a goal, but then it's also like, dang, like that's over. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. All good things come to an end, and like a part of the journey is it ending, and about the memory of it. And I haven't thought about that in a long time. I'm getting uncomfortable just thinking about it because for the first year, honestly, for the first year after the PCT, I would see these generic stock images in these PowerPoint slides that were of a dock or of the mountains. And I would begin to tear up. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I miss that so much. Like, wow, what am I doing here? Less what am I doing here and more just wow, that was an amazing experience thing that I did. And I wasn't sad to not be on trail.
It's a mixed bag of emotions, I would assume.
Yeah, it is. It seriously is. Because I was actually kind of sad, but I was also just I don't know, just get outside.
You were happy that you accomplished it. You were proud of it. And then also at the same time, I think looking back on it, it's that is a really cool thing that I did and I can share with people. And I can say that I've done this, so I could really do anything. So what's your favorite memory from the trip?
Oh my gosh. That is also a total mixed bag because there's a couple things that happen per day that are just shocking.
Sure. Sure.
It's kind of boring and then things just look so shocking. So the ones that had the biggest emotional impact are when you're going through the desert or some really hard section. Mm-hmm. There's a portion in Southern Oregon that's really difficult. And there are these people, there are these people that are referred to as trail angels.
Okay.
And they do something called trail magic. And they're basically volunteers or kind of alumni of the PCT. And they'll either hide a cooler of stuff or they'll cook, burgers on trail. And you're not expecting it all. So you're just hiking and you're like, oh my gosh, this is my 30th mile and everything hurts. And I hate this section. Or whatever, whatever feelings you're feeling. And you'll turn a corner and there's a guy and a gal with a cooler with Gatorades and Reese's. And you're like, oh my God. I fall to my knees, sobbing. It's so stoked, oh, wow. You guys are the greatest people, in the world. There's nothing like that. I don't know. I think a lot of people run these days, or if you do anything hard,
right.
You want to run for 30 minutes and the best part of the run is when you stop running,
right.
You get a massive drink of water. It's that on steroids.
Sure.
So there was a couple of those really cool memories. You just really restore your faith in humanity. Not that I didn't have faith in humanity before, but these people are just so kind to take. They bought this with their own money. They totally get what everyone's going through on the PCT, and they just want to be a support. And it didn't happen that often, but like, geez.
Yeah, it just builds your faith.
People.
It builds your faith in people. It builds your faith. That's good.
And it's so wonderful. So like the community on trail is just so tight. It felt like, and the alumni are so tight, and I don't know.
Do you get asked about the PCT on when your job interviews once you left the PCT? Do people ask you about it, or do you put it on your resume or anything like that?
I definitely put it on my resume just for the sake of explaining the gap, because there's like a 7-month gap, and they're like, "What did you do here?" And I do think that it's worth talking about, and worth talking about the lessons I learned if they want to ask about it. But yeah, honestly, people don't ask about me about it that much. It's more of just like, oh, that's cool. Like I'm a big hiker, a big backpacker,
right?
So we'll chat about that, but. Yeah, I didn't take that many interviews when I switched jobs, and this was the first time I've really switched jobs. So, because I guess for the listeners, I went back to my same company.
They were very gracious to you in that.
Yeah, I was super thankful. Honestly, those people are like family to me. Yeah, I moved back to San Francisco. I actually wanted to move back to New York, but they were opening up an office out here, and they gave me the best kind of package. I think because I was probably low risk to them.
Right.
And they didn't fire me before, and I didn't necessarily want to leave them. I just kind of wanted to leave New York and get out of my situation. So it was easy to go back.
Sure. So if someone's thinking about taking a sabbatical or time off or doing an adventure like that in the middle of the career, what do you suggest they do or think through?
I think the why is really important. So if I was going through a similar thing that I was going through in New York now, or if let's say I saw a friend who was doing that, I would recommend therapy over quitting and going and doing that. Honestly, I'm a huge fan of therapy now.
Me too. I'm with you.
It's like amazing. Yeah. It's expensive, but it's like you're going to get the best ROI ever. As long as your therapist is good or whatever. But yeah, I think it's funny. The word sabbatical is so funny because when I quit, I was hyper emotional. I was like, you guys are like family to me, but I just got to do this thing. Yeah. And so I told my boss that, and he's like, okay, whatever. He actually cried a little bit too, if he's listening to this. Spoiler alert, he did that. But my CRO, his boss called me and was like, why are you doing this? Like what? And I was like, don't try to like talk me out of it. I've made my decision. But he was like, well, let me put you on a sabbatical. Like go on a sabbatical. And I was like, I'm not going on a sabbatical. I'm like 24 years old. That's for 40-year-olds. That's what I said to him. And I was like, I'm not going on a sabbatical. I'm quitting and I'm hiking the PCT. So, I don't know. The word sabbatical is interesting. I mean, now that I think back to it, I guess it was, a sabbatical to me is like a time of rest. It's intentional rest. And this had an aspect of rest, but it was an adventure.
It was an adventure, yeah.
Like what? I don't know. Like what do I don't view it as really different from my career. Like it was, I wanted to go do this for a time and learn what it had to teach me. You know?
It was very fluid for you. That's cool. Because I don't think a lot of people would think like that, though. A lot of people would view that as time off and then time on. But it contributed to your career in the long term. Obviously, you learned skills for your professional life.
My well-being. Not the sabbaticals, no, but I rest a lot different now. Like if I'm to rest intentionally, like it just looks so much different. So
in what ways? What do you mean by that? I'm actually curious. What do you mean by that? Why does rest look how does rest look different?
It looks like a lot of being still, because again, you're running away on trail. So I actually listened to a lot of podcasts on trail. So I was still kind of running away from myself to a certain extent and just like my feelings. But, you get bored of podcasts, you get bored of music, which just sounds impossible. But I mean, we're talking 12 to 13 hour days of hiking,
right?
Day after day. So eventually you just take everything out and you just lower the stimulus. But so I think I learned silence and solitude on trail. That was one of my learnings. And now I feel like I can tap into that better. And I recognize the importance of that. And if I am to go on a sabbatical kind of proper, that would be a lot of that. It would be a lot of silence. It'd be a lot of like intentional praying, which is actually an exhausting thing.
Yes.
But it's like kind of this deep work that you're doing.
Active rest. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas passive rest might be like watching Netflix or something. Or you're just kind of resting your body and your mind a little bit. But yeah, I think a sabbatical is very is probably very intellectually and emotionally stimulating. Mm-hmm. And I mean, yeah, the times that I've kind of had rest now, like I took 2 weeks off in between my last job and this job. And I would say that was super restful. Like I made like every intention to journal, to read, to pray, to reflect. I wrote letters to all the people in my company who had a big impact on me and who I kind of really wanted to say goodbye to. That was an important part of the closure that I needed. Like I would wrap all that into rest, yeah.
I love that. I think that's great. I mean, I think your experience, this has actually been really fun for me personally, even to hear this story, because I think there's a lot of this that I didn't know. Yeah. And what you learned.
We were going back and forth pretty frequently, I feel like. Me and that.
Yeah. And so I don't think I knew a lot after the fact of like how you process through it afterwards, because there's questions of if you're moving back to New York. Yeah. And I think you would. It's such a life-changing activity that you did, a massive goal that you accomplished, and its reverberations in your life are going to last for much longer than a month of reflecting on it, right? So you're going to see it play out in lots of different areas. And I love that it is probably more intertwined in your professional life than you're even realizing of how it's influencing it. And I think it's really cool that you did it. I think it's really awesome. I hope that anyone who's listening is just kind of inspired by what Aaron did. And also that I think there's such beauty in what I'm even learning from recording all these episodes is that there is such beauty in resting. And there is such beauty in taking time off from your career, whether that looks like a week, whether that looks like maybe figuring out your days differently, or whether it means taking 4 months off and going on an adventure, whatever that looks like. I think what I'm hearing more and more is it actually doesn't harm your career. It actually encourages and empowers you in your career. And so that has been an awesome learning I feel like I've taken away even from this conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's really a pleasure to be on here and to talk to you, Jenna. So appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, how can people get connected to you if they want to?
That's a good question. I mean, LinkedIn's probably the best way. I guess I don't know if you want to post that. If there's like a blog post on here, I don't know if I remember the URL. I think it's like Aaron C. Bailey 91 or something. I don't know, but yeah, we can get it to you somehow.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. We'll get you covered. We'll get you covered. We'll put it in the show notes. And thank you so much for joining us. And friends, we'll see you on another episode of the Your Career Story podcast.
Right on. Thanks a lot, Jenna.
Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for listening to Your Career Story podcast. I would love to get to meet you. And there are a couple of ways that we can connect in between episodes. First and foremost, I love my LinkedIn. Second is via Instagram. And third is over on my website. I actually have a special spot just for you full of fun, free resources. So all you have to do is go to www.jennaviviano.com/resources. Super simple, for a bunch of freebies that will help you boost your career. Hope to see you next week.